Greetings, everybody. It's RPG Grandma, and we're continuing with missiles combat for the Warriors of Mars, TSR's unfortunately canceled game. The problem with missiles is you need the mass combat land rules to do the individual combat rules that are different than the mass combat rules. But you could use the mass combat rules if you prefer, and you need them both. No matter what you do, you need them both. So we have to do mass combat. And I said land rules because there's also aerial rules, and those are separate. So the first thing we need to cover is figure scale. So in mass combat, you put a bunch of figures on a stand, and each one of those figures represents so many people. In Warriors of Mars, the basic figure scale is, for mass combat, is one figure equals 50 people. That's the 150 scale. Unless you're doing the individual combat, in which one figure equals one person. There's also a difference in distance scale. 1 inch in mass combat equals 10 yards. 1 inch in the 1-to-1 scale equals 6 feet. All right. So we're going to probably do scale a couple times in videos. And then the flyers, that's a whole different thing. And then time is also different. 1 turn equals 1 minute in the mass combat. 1 turn equals 10 seconds in the 1-to-1 individual role-playing type combat. All right. So I wanted to cover that real quick. So as we get into the rules here on how the missile fire works for mass combat, before going into the 1-to-1 other rules, you'll understand that there's differences going on and what those might be. Because if one figure can say fire 200 times in mass combat, that doesn't mean one figure can fire 200 times in 1-to-1 combat. You've got to divide that number by 50, and that'll give you a better idea of how many bullets somebody could have, basically. All right? So I'm going to start the mass combat rules. All right, mass combat rules for missiles. Okay, the aerial combat rules for that are different and will not be covered. Types and ranges of missiles used in land battles will be detailed, and the effects of the missile fire will be given in the combat tables. Numbers of ranks firing. 1, except bows, which may fire 2 ranks deep. All right, so you got a bow, you can do more in the Army. Rate of fire. Javelins, once per turn, 3 times maximum per figure. Remember, each figure represents 50 people. Bows, twice per turn, 20 times maximum per figure. Pistols, twice per turn, 30 times maximum per figure. Rifles, twice per turn, 200 times maximum per figure. Troops firing twice may not move. Missile ranges, the range at the 150 scale for the Army, and the range at the 1-1 individual fighting are given here. Javelins or hurled sword, used only in individual combat. Okay, that's the note for that. At the 150, it's 6 inches. At the 1-1, it's 6 inches maximum range of the hurled sword. All right. Medium 18, long 30. Bow is 24 inches at the 150. At the 1-1, short 30, medium 75, long 120. Pistol 150 scale 48. At the 1-1 scale, short range 40, medium range 80, long range 240. Rifle unlimited range at the scale of 150, but it can only be an individual troop on the board in the army doing that. So again, you use it only in individual combat. Okay, so range at 1-1, short is 60, medium is 120, and long range is unlimited. Sighting device allows fire up to 200 miles. That's why they say unlimited. Rifles are a bit different in that they have such a long range on Barsoom in the books that basically anybody firing a rifle that really can sight well has a really, really long firing range, which of course is really problematic for wargaming and for role-playing gaming. So that's why it's listed as unlimited. In a mass combat situation, it probably gets defaulted to a much shorter range, and probably most people who have played this, because the unlimited is listed as used only in individual combat. So that would be the one lone fighter on the field targeting something far, far away. Otherwise, the unit would probably default to the pistol, is anyway how I would referee it. Even though it can obviously shoot a longer distance, it's also just a matter of how big is your table. There is that. So that's a real issue. And it's a similar, just because something has a really long range, if you can't actually, if it can't go that far because there's something in the way, then that shot's not going to go that far. All right. So something to keep in mind. Remember, the inches are different. So, and how they equal. So you have to keep in mind when you look at charts like this that you have to do a little math in your head. Okay, the 1-to-1 scale uses a different distance than the 1 person equals 50 people scale. All right, firing procedure. Units may fire at the beginning of the turn only if they are eligible to fire twice. Fire is taken as follows. Unit which fires once per turn at the beginning may not fire. However, at mid-turn, they may, or at the end. And we'll get to what mid-turn means here in a second. Fires twice per turn, the unit that does that, can fire at the beginning, at the mid, and at the end. Now they can only do it twice, so they either fire at the beginning and the end, or the mid and the end, or the beginning and the mid. The mid represents pass-through fire. And basically missile troops which do not fire at the beginning or move during a turn may elect to fire at any unit which passes through their range and arc of fire, including troops charging them. Pass-through fire is taken at the halfway point of the target's movement prior to all other fire and before movement is completed. So they have entered the range of the person with the missile, and thus they become a viable target and they can be fired on. Okay, any unit meleeed at the end of movement may not fire in fire. So if the opponent's side enters into melee with your unit of people or the individual figurine, they're now in range. They are considered to be in melee, and if you hadn't already fired, you can't fire now. Now you are forced to do combat with some other sort of weapon, your hands, a sword, something, but you cannot just fire. You've got a bigger problem. They're on top of you. Okay, arc of fire. Foot units have a 45-degree left or right. Mounted units are 135-degree left and 45-degree right. Split move and fire. This type of maneuver is not permitted. So split move and fire, that is where you move, fire, and move. And it is something that was allowed for light cavalry in chainmail, off the top of my head. Certain cavalry troops could do it. Also in elves. Elves could do it on foot. They were like, they're the only, because, we all know elves are better at everything, right? The dwarves will disagree, but for some reason in the rules, it seems to work out that way. So that was something elves could do better. So that's what that is, split move and fire, and you're not allowed to do that in Warriors of Mars. Indirect fire. Only bow-armed troops may fire indirect. They may fire over the heads of intervening troops, which are at least 2 inches or 10 inches, using the 1-to-1 scale, away from the firing troops. Indirect fire reduces target casualties by 1/2. Indirect fire over relatively low objects and or terrain features is also possible, but the relative height of the intervening object must be considered. So this is because they have that arc and they can adjust their arc, right? So they don't hit their buddies, but they could take out maybe units charging at their buddies. Missiles may not fire at units behind skirmishes except for indirect fire. Note, missiles may not be fired into a melee. You are not allowed to do that. Extraction of missile casualties. This is done in the same manner as in the melee casualty extraction, which is explained in the next section. Loss of personality or commander figures, also explained in the next section. Terrain effects on missiles. In addition, rank of missile troops is standing upon a higher terrain than the rank or ranks ahead of it, which are eligible to fire. The rank on higher ground may also fire because they're over the heads of, they're instead of having your 2 ranks like this, you've got one up here. So these guys can fire. Thus, 2 ranks of all types of missile troops, save bows, would be eligible to fire. And 3 ranks of bowmen could fire, because you could do this and then have another group here, or you could do this and then have another group here. So these guys could be riflemen, and the guys back here could be bowmen, and they could be, right? Okay. Missile fire in dense woods is not permitted. It's just going to get stuck in the trees. Terrain effects upon casualties from missile fire are dealt with in the combat tables. All right, missile fire table. What's on it? Well, we have multiple columns, of course, and type of missile per 10 fired. Then we have target is section, and we have human type infantry has its own column. Green infantry has its own column. Human type cavalry has its own column. Green cavalry has its own column. The reason for this is there is a massive size difference in the green men compared to the humans, and the green men's mounts compared to the humans' mounts. One group is like giants, that would be the green men. The other group, well, they're regular human-sized and regular horsey-sized, more or less. And that's the issue. Bigger, smaller. Okay. So we have javelins against human type infantry is 2. Green men infantry is 1. Human type cavalry is 1. Green men cavalry 1/2. Arrows. Human type infantry 3. Green infantry 1 1/2. Human type cavalry 1 1/2. Green cavalry 1. Radium pistols 4 against human type infantry. Green infantry 2. Human type infantry 2. Green cavalry 2. Radium rifles. Human type infantry 5. Green infantry 5. Human type cavalry 3. Green cavalry 3. Adjustments. Green Martians firing radium rifles add 1 kill per 10 firing to result shown above. Soft cover, such as vegetables, subtracts 25% from casualties. Hard cover, such as stone walls, subtracts 50% from casualties. Fire at skirmishes subtracts 50% from casualties. Oh man, I cannot talk. Fractions. Retain all fractions until such time as they are totaled a whole, at which time a casualty is accordingly extracted. Okay? So now that we covered all the mass combat rules for missile fire, minus the ships, the aerial combat, we're moving on to missile fire alternate rules for individual combat. All right. So, missile fire. Players, they may opt to fire and move, or move and fire, or fire and fire. Okay. Pass-through fire is allowed, but just like in the previous rules for the mass combat, split move and fire is not permitted. So, pass-through fire, it's the exact same rules. Missile troops which do not fire at the beginning of the move during a turn may elect to fire at any unit which passes through their range and arc of fire, including troops charging them. Pass-through fire is taken at the halfway point of the target's movement prior to all other fire and before movement is completed. So, player can't have moved, but if they've got their rifle and or their bow or their javelin or they're holding their sword and they're like, yeah, I'm going to throw this at the guy because he's charging me, they can do it. All right. Units meleeed at the end of movement may not fire. Figures may not fire into a melee. They mean players. You're not supposed to do that. Okay. Procedure. Firing player rolls 2 dice. Again, we're using 6-sided dice. In sequence. The first number must be matched or beat in order to score a hit. Modifiers by the player's status, weapon, range, etc. The modified number, if the modified number is not matched or exceeded by the score of the second dice roll, the missile failed to hit the target. The first die modifications, you're going to add to the number defender soft cover. Defender is in soft cover, +1. Is it long range? If it is, +1. Are they a moving target? If they are, +1. They're harder to hit. Target behind cover, +2. All right, subtractions. So what makes it easier to hit? Is the green man firing? They get an advantage, -1. Is it John Carter firing? He gets an advantage, -1. Is the weapon a radium rifle? If it is, -1. And is the target at short range? -1. Hits by missiles will kill any figure not above 6th level. So, any missiles will kill a player character not above 6th level. This is why you don't shoot into the melees. It's bad form. All others take the equivalent of 7 wounds, because at 7th level, a green man or a human will have 8 hit points, and so they will have 1 hit point left after getting shot. So they're still alive. And now you can see why the animals get all those kind of special rules on their when you're using missiles at them. When they say, "Oh, you'll probably kill them anyway." This is why. And when I say the game is lethal, this is what I mean. Below a certain level, you do not want to get shot. You're just dead. Okay? So those are the missile rules. And I hope you guys are finding this interesting, helpful. I'm sure somebody went 200 miles. That's why I said good luck, DMs. If they can see it, they can hit it. Also, you're going to see a different bell curve here, because you're using 2 dice to generate the number, plus the modifiers. So it's going to be a flatter bell curve to try to hit whatever number you generated on the first roll that you now have to generate again on your second roll for missile combat. But there you go. It's a deadly game. I'm going to have so much fun playing this on the 1-to-1 rules. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Stay awesome. And peace out. I am sure you noticed I have yet to mention anything about rolling dice. I will when we get to the individual role-playing game dice rolling, but there is no mention of rolling dice in the mass combat for missiles.